Hello everyone! Welcome back to our series creating Tarkir Dragonfall, an entirely new custom fan set developed for Magic the Gathering. Today we'll actually be developing two new draft archetypes for our set, both Boros and Simic. Before we get into the cards and mechanics, I have to let you know that the reason this video took so long is because I hit a bit of a challenge. Not a mechanical design one, I'm still having a blast creating cards for this set, but an artistic one. I'm starting to run out of good fantasy art inspired by East and Central Asian cultures and history, without the art actually being from a Tarkir set already. So in this video, you will see for the first time some cards with art that I drew myself. Forgive me. You'll know it when you see it, and hopefully the less than professional art quality won't distract you from the design elements of the cards I'm about to show you today. Anyway, like I said, today we'll be figuring out the draft archetypes for red and white and blue and green. While it has taken several videos to get here, I actually knew what I wanted to do with Boros almost since the beginning of this project. This was a story-driven decision. Since this set's narrative is centered around the rebellion against the Dragon Lords, I decided it would be a perfect opportunity to bring back the Revolt mechanic from Aether Revolt. Revolt is a pretty simple ability word that cares about permanents leaving your side of the battlefield. Probably the most famous example of this mechanic is on the card Fatal Push. Revolt interacts with any permanents leaving the battlefield for any reason, so red Revolt cards will work synergistically with the Vile tokens we developed for blue-red in the last video. It also functions with creatures dying due to exploit or other sacrifice cards. However, it won't normally trigger from your dash cards because dash specifies that the creatures will go back to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So playing Revolt cards on your turn when you've dashed something out won't actually automatically trigger him, since the dashed creature will still be on your side of the field for the remainder of your turn. If Dash or Revolt cards prove to be underpowered in the set and need a boost, maybe the solution will be making a slightly altered version of Dash that returns creatures to the hand if they deal combat damage or at the end of the combat phase, but for now, we're going to work with what we got with the original Dash. Here are some examples of Revolt cards that I have designed for this set. First up, we have Abzan Rebel. This is a 1/2 human rebel that costs 1 and a white, and its ability is Revolt. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It's a common. So basically, this is a pretty simple creature. It gets bigger the more times that Revolt happens during your turn. It starts out pretty cheap and weak, but if you can keep it around long enough and you have the right strategy with enough cards that leave the field, it can get pretty big and potentially threaten your opponent's life total. But even if it doesn't, there are going to be cards that care about +1/+1 counters or just creatures being stronger in general, like we saw in the green-white archetype, so this card fits into that pretty well. Next up, we have Rushing Retributor. This is a 3/2 human monk rebel that costs 2 and a red, it's another common, and it has Revolt. When this creature enters, if a permanent left the battlefield under your control this turn, this creature gets +1/+1 and gains haste until end of turn. Another pretty simple but powerful common card. It's a 3/2 normally, but if something left the battlefield the turn you played it, then it's a 4/3 with haste, so it can immediately start attacking your opponents with quite a lot of power. Finally, our multicolor uncommon for the sets is Freefeather Comrade. This is a 3/3 dragon that costs 3, 1 red, and 1 white mana, and it has Vigilance, Flying, Haste, and Revolt. This spell costs 2 less to cast if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. Once again, a pretty simple card, but highly effective. Vigilance, Flying, and Haste on a dragon, for even if it is just a 3/3, is pretty significant. This creature can definitely threaten your opponent's life total immediately after coming down, and still remain a blocker on your opponent's turn. And the Revolt cost is sort of just a bonus on top of that. It's reducing the cost of the Freefeather Comrade, assuming you have cards that leave the battlefield in red and white. Next, for the Simic color pair, I'm once again taking inspiration from the original Tarkir block and designing a new face-down creature mechanic. Several recent standard sets have used face-down creatures, modifying the original morph and manifest mechanics respectively to power the mechanics up for the current 2026 Magic standard power level. I tried a couple different approaches to a new face-down mechanic. I considered an alteration of Manifest Dread that scribes the top card of your library instead of surveilling. I thought about face-down cards maybe coming in as lands instead of creatures, but I think my final idea is the most interesting, and I can't wait to playtest it and see how it works. Undermine is the face-down mechanic for this set. Like most face-down costs printed on the creature itself, you can play a creature with Undermine face down as a 2/2 creature for 3 mana. However, like with Disguise, this 2/2 creature isn't a vanilla. It has Skulk, an ability first printed in Shadows over Innistrad. Skulk works the same way that first ability on The Ring Tempts You from Lord of the Rings does as well. A creature with Skulk can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. I'm hoping that the combination of Skulk and Face Down makes Undermine a really interesting guessing game for the set. Players would naturally want to avoid blocking face down creatures with their smaller creatures because their opponent might turn it face up and suddenly their 1/1 is blocking a 5/5 with trample. But Skulk forces opponents to use smaller creatures to block. Meanwhile, it forces the player controlling the face-down creature to weigh the benefits of keeping a 2/2 creature with minor evasion on the field versus spending the mana to get a better creature but losing that Skulk ability, potentially making it harder to get in for damage unless the creature has another evasive ability like Trample or Flying. Undermine will be primarily printed in blue and green, but there will be creatures in all 5 colors that have the ability. Here are some examples. Sneaking Supply Runner is a 0/3 human rebel that costs 2 and a green. At the beginning of your second main phase, if this creature is tapped, create a food token, and it has Undermine with a cost of 1 green mana. So, this creature can come in as a 0/3 for 2 and a green mana, or you can pay 3 colorless mana to put it down as a 2/2 with Skulk that can potentially get in for damage into your opponent. And when it attacks, if you flip it up, it will be tapped, and you create a food token. Then afterwards, while it's face up, you'll have to do some other clever trickiness to be able to get it tapped, because it's a 0/3, you could attack with it, but it's not actually going to do any damage, so giving it away to tap for mana, or tapping it for some other effect, is probably the best way to use this card after flipping it up. Next we have Underground Hound. This is a 2/2 Dog Assassin that costs 2 and a black, and it has Undermine with a cost of 1 and a black, and the ability, when this creature enters or is turned face up, destroy target creature without flying. The way this creature is designed, it can either be sorcery speed removal or instant speed removal with an additional amount of mana investment. You can put Underground Hound onto your field as a normal creature and still get its effect for 2 and a black, but the effect will only be at sorcery speed, since you can only play this creature on your turn. However, if you put it face down for 3 mana, and then on a subsequent turn, put it face up for 1 and a black, then you can do it on your opponent's turn and remove something they have that doesn't have flying at instant speed. Next we have Palm Strike Peacekeeper. This is a 0/4 human monk that costs 1 and a blue. It has Undermine that's also 1 and a blue as its cost, and it has, when this creature is turned face up, return up to 1 target creature to its owner's hand. This is a pretty simple but effective card for synergizing with either revolt mechanic effects that we talked about earlier in this video, if you return something you control, or its removal for your opponent's creatures. If you flip this creature face up after blockers are declared and it's not blocked, you won't actually do any damage, but you can still remove something as per its ability. Or you can just keep it as a 2/2 until it eventually becomes blocked, and then flip it up and remove whatever's blocking it. Either way, a pretty useful and versatile card, and I'm interested to see how it does. Finally, we have Fearsome Frostbreather. This is the only rare card with Undermine I've designed so far. It is a 4/4 dragon that costs 5 and a blue, so 6 mana in total. It has Undermine that costs 3 and a blue, and it has Flying, and when this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may tap a creature or artifact that player controls and put that many stun counters on it. A pretty simple lockdown effect. We've seen this printed in blue and sometimes white plenty of times in the past. It fits into the blue-white strategy of having flying creatures and being a little control-y, but it also fits in other strategies and is a pretty good hate piece against either a player's Vile tokens if they're trying to untap those and use them to burn you, or any other tricky artifacts and creatures your opponent has that you want to make sure they can't untap with. What did you think of Undermine and the Return of Revolt? What types of cards would you like to see use these mechanics in the sets? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next video.